Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. It is Wednesday. It is the eve-ish of Divisional weekend. We have 7 games remaining. We have 8 teams remaining. Not a lot of quarterbacks in our intro still playing football. That's something else, I guess.
Yeah, hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, we're getting near. We're getting to the end of the road here. We're going to do one of these for the conference championships. We'll do an interstitial week one.
We do who's golfing?
Super Bowl one, and
the interstitial is always the Let's talk about the 30 teams that aren't here. Just briefly, like
we should do our awards show then too, maybe.
Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
Then.
Just because we did it last year doesn't mean we have to do it this year. We can do awards. Maybe that is a good awards week.
Yeah, because we can talk about the everybody else after.
We
can talk about some of the everybody else's now.
That's a good February. Well, no, that is. I brought this up off the air with Drew. I said, we only have the 4 games. Sometimes we're pushed and pressed and limited by the fact that we have 16 games to talk about with a little more space, a little more room to breathe tonight. So, we were going to touch on some of the news, and Dame points out one of the first things. We'll start with that because the chat has brought it up. Mike McCarthy is returning. I guess I didn't really bring this up too much on the air. I feel like I talked about it once, but Jerry kind of tends to speak his mind.
Yes, he does.
When we went to the end of the year, Jerry was pretty glowing about Mike. The fact that he said, I've been really impressed with the coaching this year. I'm happy with where we're at with the coaching. Like, he wasn't in a, hey, we could have been better. We should have been better. We better be good in the playoffs. Like, he was kind of in a good mood. So I guess it's not as surprising as it seems to be to some that they would cut him loose this early. Jerry, I don't know. Maybe Jerry realizes that he's not getting Bill. He probably doesn't want to work with Bill. I don't know.
Do you want? Is that enough?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you're not getting Bill. You're probably not getting Jim. Like, where's your upgrade? Is it Harbaugh? Is it one of these OCs? Yeah. He's never been, I don't know, great about identifying some, up and comers. He's found guys that have had. I mean, Jimmy Johnson had some success previously, I'd say. McCarthy obviously had some success previously. I don't know what the Jason Garrett thing was. The Phillips name carries some weight. So I don't know that he would go after Callahan or
Bill Parcells. He brought Parcells in. That didn't go so hot. That was a weird one. All right. I bring my
and to Patrick's point,
character. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this next year. It does kind of feel like he is going to be written about a bunch in August. Like, guys on the hot seat. Number 1, Mike McCarthy for sure.
Yeah. And my hot seat or whatever. McCarthy and Tomlin may walk away from the game because they're at that stage. They're at the Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick stage of their careers anyway. Like, they may need a breather for lack of a better word. So it may be a mutual parting of ways. Who the heck knows? Sirianni coming back by the sound of it. They're although they have a lot of work to do to repopulate their coordinator space. You know what the theme of a lot of this was, I thought, is that fewer coaches who made the playoffs this year were fired, largely because there's not obviously good candidates you can get. There's a lot of teams that are ahead of you in line in terms of evaluating candidates, which does not help you. And really, the coordinator searches is the real, wow. The coordinator hires last year were pretty bad in hindsight. And this year's is not going any better. Like, we're kind of in this weird vacuum where if you weren't in that sort of special group with Kyle Shanahan and McVay, you got a lot of catching up to do to be an elite coordinator.
Help us out in the chat here if you can think of some names. But I'm trying to think of a coordinator hire. Obviously the Baltimore thing worked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much we can attribute to Monken and how much we're going to give Lamar and the rest of the skill players and maybe even Harbaugh. But Flores was a good hire, but that was kind of a known where, hey, this guy is a good DC. He will be. The main concern is he doesn't have the players there yet. Again, replacing some of the guys in San Francisco, jury's a little out on that, where, you had to replace another defensive coordinator, and with DeMeco Ryans going to Houston, and it's hard to tell with some of the injuries they suffered there. I think consensus among 49er fans is they don't love the replacement. What are you going to do? You've had to replace a lot of guys. That's what happens when you're a good team. Obviously, ask Philly now with they're sitting probably with two coordinators they don't love. The clips of Philadelphia sports radio were spectacular. That was great. Social media.
Philly's not going to receive Patricia, right? No. Yeah. No, they're starting over for defense, I think. I don't know. I haven't been paying attention.
Canales, good call, Vodzilla.
Canales was a great
I'd love
get.
to see get a coach job, head coaching job.
Yeah. For all the criticism we launched at Bobby Slowick for his for shooting himself in the dick against the Colts, like he showed an ability to self-evaluate and improve in the wild card round, which was impressive. I would look at I would definitely say that like we're not going to know who like the good up and coming like quarterback coach or offensive quality control guys are, right?
It's so hard. Like how do you pick out a Dave Canales? Like you have to be really in the weeds.
You have to be really in the weeds, and you have to have had a good conversation with the guy last offseason, probably in the evaluation process. We were like, oh, this guy's got something going on, and then you see him or his group succeed at the in the actual on the field of play to kind of validate and back up your assumptions about a given guy. But yeah, I mean, the hiring process is crazy. It's weird. It's challenging. And I don't know. There's not a ton of good candidates, and picking from the college ranks has never really worked out well. Probably will be fine for Harbaugh just because he's done it. It's not coming into this blind, but yeah, it's definitely.
I guess I wasn't supremely confident that they'd bring him back despite of what Jerry said, but the one part that kind of was nagging at me thinking maybe they do make a move outside of working with Jerry Jones, it's a very good job as far as like, I mean, think about taking the job taking the job in Carolina and what you're left with there compared to taking the job in Dallas, where you have an established quarterback, you have good offensive line, you have some wide receivers that are working out, you have some good defensive players. Maybe you retain Dan Quinn for another year. Like, it's a pretty good job as far as they could have opened it up and probably gotten, almost anyone they wanted. I think, like I said, Harbaugh seems to have his sights set on the West Coast there if he does leave college, and who knows with Bill.
If you are a team that loses a good offense coordinator like the Lions may with Ben Johnson, do you try to promote within, or do you try to elevate a guy who's never done it before, or do you try to go get like a Bieniemy or something like that? I guess. Do you think Bieniemy will get kicked?
I don't think Bieniemy would take shots. I don't think he'd take another OC job. Why would he move again? Unless he's forced to, unless the new coaching staff is saying, I want to bring my own guys in. That's part of the deal when he goes and meets with the new owners there. It could be a case where Bieniemy again is not getting the run for head coaching jobs. And what might have screwed him is Brissett getting hurt in week 17.
Sure.
I had this conspiracy.
He
that was my conspiracy theory for the entire year, was because it made no sense to start Jacoby Brissett, right? Like, why would you? He's a quarterback upgrade. I get that you're always trying to win games, but if you're Rivera, everyone knows your job is done. Like, why? What are you trying to do except maybe be a dick on the way out? And that doesn't seem like his style. So I had a conspiracy theory. He was starting Brissett as like doing a solid for Bieniemy. Said, all right, Bieniemy, like, you can put 2 good games of film on with a good quarterback here. Go get a job. And then it just didn't obviously work out due to the injury. But yeah, he's not getting any run either.
Yeah. All right. So there's so much left to play out. But like, I just gotta tell you that none of like the hires or rumored hires or GM buzz or coordinator buzz, none of it's really moving the needle. I gotta say, and maybe I'm just biased because of what we saw this year. Like, the entire I guess if you weren't featured in play callers, was that the Jordan Rodriguez series in the off season? Yeah, if you weren't featured in play callers, kind of didn't have a very good year, unless you were you with an elite quarterback, were you featured in play callers, then you kind of.
I think this is a
cold.
fun.
You're kind of a cold fish.
Fun project though. I think it's a fun project to dig through some of the coaching staff lists and do some reading up on some of these teams. Maybe some of you guys who are fans of teams, or at least live in that area, listen to that kind of sports radio from your town, know a little bit more. If you have any nuggets, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Put it in the Discord, in the YouTube comments, on Twitter, whatever. But where are some of these guys like a Dave Canales, where it's like, obviously he was a big part of the offensive game plan. Like, those are the guys that get hired to be an OC somewhere else.
Sure.
I think that what he did with, Geno Smith was a big part of it, but those kind of guys are not in the room when the offensive game plan is made. It seems like they're the kind of people that have some input, but they're not calling the plays, and then they get that next step. So be interesting.
That makes sense. One real quick note: there has been a clear winner in the coaching merry-go-round. Somehow, this Cincinnati Bengals staff is staying together.
I know.
Nobody really into Callahan. Nobody really into Big Lou. Like, they're gonna run it back again with a good draft.
It's like play calling by committee, so he doesn't get the shine. But and I wrote this down too. I said, eventually you have to spread the credit around. There's no, maybe there have been quarterbacks. Maybe Mahomes is different. Maybe we've seen some crazy things with Rodgers or even Favre back in the day with that coaching staff. Jesus, but it can't all be players. It's part players, it's part coaches. That ratio changes from team to team, but at some point we have to give the offensive play callers and the offensive minds in Cincinnati some sort of credit for not only what they've done with Burrow and the rest of the team for the last few years, but they got something out of Browning even. So I don't know if Lou lost his fastball, as Hef's saying. I think he's still a better than average defensive coordinator that makes good adjustments, as we all like to harp on. But Callahan is somebody I thought might get a little better look, and maybe he needs to pull the Bieniemy, where he actually goes somewhere and he says, "I'm the play caller." Oh yeah, the Titans. The Titans have. I don't think he's like a serious candidate there, but that would be a nice little fit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before getting into the games, there is one other kind of macro point that I'd like to ask your opinion on. We spent a lot of time, we being the media, the what are you laughing about?
You see this Anthony Edwards dunk?
Oh no, I haven't seen it.
He murdered I think there's 3 guys in the lane, and all of them just made decisions.
Oh, sick.
Nope.
The media collective that kind of commented on super wild card weekend. I was a reflection on all 6 teams, particularly all 12 teams, particularly the 6 teams that won, which means that there was an awful lot of not a ton of commentary on the Niners and the Ravens, right? I think it's kind of known these are good teams. The Niners, I agree, they're elite. The Ravens power rating right now it's up there with the elite if they're almost 10-point favorites against the Texans. Both teams obviously with extra rest. Both teams kind of coming into full health, but both teams with, I think, the 2 quarterbacks who have the most volatile sort of arc to play out over this cycle. Okay, bear with me. Stroud's proven.
I got a text from the wife.
Oh, you don't. I was like, you don't want to go down this road? Okay.
No. I'm shaking my head at her. Hopefully she's
okay. So Stroud, he's proven it. He's playing with house money now. Jordan Love, proven it, beyond proven it, playing with house money at this point. Jared Goff, he won a playoff game in Detroit. The guy's never going to buy beer there the rest of his life. Baker Mayfield, he's resurrected his career. This is
playoff
good.
Games with 2 different franchises.
Yeah. Hey, Pat Mahomes, he's got nothing to prove. Josh Allen, he's a top 3, no doubter. And, he, even if his season ends, like he dragged, a broken and beaten team that was left for dead at 6-6 into the, second round of the playoffs. Like there'll be some scrutiny on the Bills, but it's not, Josh Allen's reputation really isn't going to be harmed with a loss, right? Lamar Jackson has never succeeded in the playoffs.
He's going to get, it's going to be written about heavily if they like bottle this game, especially since they're, a big favorite.
Yeah.
That's going to follow you.
Yeah. And Brock Purdy is still fighting the anchoring of Mr. Irrelevant. Yeah. There's still a lot of people who when the Niners lose.
Look at the experience level of the NFC quarterbacks.
Yes.
And it's like, Goff by like times 5.
Yeah.
As far as
Goff's your most experienced player. Yeah, absolutely.
By a bunch. Everyone else is just this year's. I mean,
he just went toe to toe with the other most experienced in Stafford.
Yeah.
It's like, this is Goff's been to a Super Bowl. Yeah. Like, the reality, I think, is that Saturday's games are gonna, if either of the 1 seeds lose, it's going to turn into just a toxic indictment of those quarterbacks. Do you agree?
Yeah. I do want to agree with John Charles. It was around a touchdown for that Titans Ravens game.
I think it was 8. Yeah, it was 8.
I was going to say 7.5.
I
think it was like, because I remember it being like a teaser leg that did not get over.
I remember having a big old Ravens win the Super Bowl bet that I did not hedge, thinking that it wasn't going to be close, and it wasn't close, but for the wrong reasons.
The wife agrees with you. She says, I need a plant on my shelves. I don't have windows in here.
You definitely need a plant on your shelves.
I don't know how. It's got to be a succulent.
It was Ravens minus 10.
10?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I maybe it opened shorter and got that up.
And Lamar. This is Lamar. It came into that game after getting his clock cleaned by an Anthony Lynn coordinated defense in the San Diego Chargers the year before, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
that was where they just threw a bunch of safeties and they were like, "All right, make him throw it." Yeah. And then the following season, Lamar finally gets this W, monkey off the back, courtesy of Mike Vrabel, in-game decision-making being among the worst of any playoffs I can remember in a while. Or it was McVay-esque from last week. By the way, I rewatched that. Well, maybe I'll save those thoughts until we get to the Lions game. I will. I'll save them. But yeah, it was Lamar gets his W. And then the following week was Pick'em at Buffalo. And got so close to scoring the game-tying touchdown, went the other way, and it all went sideways. Haven't seen him in the playoffs since. I guess, just do you think that the pressure that exists, or I guess, does pressure exist now, or is it kind of like these guys kind of got lucky because they are 1 seeds and like nobody's really talking about them, nobody's really coming at this angle because it's like, you guys are elite, you're going to win by a bunch of points. Like is it more going to be people double, like coming hard if these teams lose, as opposed to kind of putting pressure on them prior to these games? Does any of this matter, you think?
I think that narrative just hasn't sparked up yet. I think once we get closer to the end of the week, because there was 12 other teams that we're talking about, and now we have all the excitement of what Stroud did, what we saw from Love, and now that we're actually getting to the part of the week where teams are, the media is starting to look ahead to this week instead of just giving everyone their flowers and being so excited for all the winners. It is time to start talking about that. I would expect that to ramp up over the next few days because of his record in the playoffs. And, I think a lot of it is going to be thrown at the feet of Roman if they do show up and just, beat the pants off a team or two here. Even if they just reach the title game, like it's a lot more than what we've seen, obviously. And, if you get to the Super Bowl, I think you can probably go into next year, be like, all right, Lamar's got it figured out. This is a team. If they make the playoffs, we're not worried about that anymore. But yeah, even if they even if they win and it's a close, ugly game or something, and he doesn't look the greatest, like that's still going to linger into next week, obviously. So I don't know. For my money, I kind of want to I don't want to bet that game. I just want to see because I just want to cheer for Lamar to have a really good game. And it's hard to how do you back? I guess you can do some player props and stuff because it's just hard to lay that many points, even with the rest.
Number, no doubt. I don't think it's warranted either. Personally, I don't think it's a fair number. You think it is?
Still have it close.
Okay, so the pressure on Lamar is absolutely something worth watching, and the pressure on Purdy, I think, is worth watching too. Although he isn't like the Purdy stinkers this year all have a common theme. It wasn't big games. It was he got hit in the head. Right.
Yeah.
Like the
Minnesota game.
Yeah. Purdy playing with clear eyes, clear mind is peak Matt Ryan kind of efficiency. Right.
Yeah.
Purdy after one shot to the noggin is Zach Wilson out there. Right.
He's the guy who just can't handle his booze. It's like the guy, it's like one beer and that guy is awful, Except I hate to compare drinking to
That's
concussions.
not crazy, though.
But you know what I'm saying. Do you all know that one guy who just can't don't let him do shots?
Don't. Oh no, not shots.
No.
Yeah,
not give him the 3-2 beer. Water that down. Put extra ice.
Water that down. Yes, he a club soda for him. Just tell him it's the vodka soda. Yeah,
I believe it was the Vikings game where he threw some late interceptions.
Yes, that was the one where he got.
That was one where it's like, that was Monday, where he got concussion protocol. Yeah.
Tuesday it was the concussion protocol, and then he stunk against the Bengals the next week, and then the game against the Vikings. I mean, I know that he didn't go into the blue 10 or whatever. He got a stinger, but he got hit pretty good. He got cracked pretty good early in that game, and I think it was I think
stingers are concussion adjacent a lot, where it's like, oh hey, his eyes aren't glossy enough, we'll call it a stinger.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think I don't know that it's a mental baggage with Purdy at all. He's young. He is playing with house money still. Shanahan has his back to the 99th degree, right? Like Shanahan loves that guy and will go to war with him forever, regardless of how he performs in the playoffs, I think. And he maybe just as, there is scope, I think, and we shouldn't, we didn't cover this much in the wake of the 4-pick performance on Christmas, 4-pick, which could have been 6, honestly. We didn't talk about it in the wake of that, but like people act like we haven't lived through Kurt Warner and Tom Brady expected to do nothing coming into the league and turning into Hall of Famers, right? Like there is clear scope for Purdy to just grow into being a great quarterback, and you shouldn't be surprised by it. Like, am I making sense?
And that's the thing too. It's hard to find a lot of like those are massive examples. They're great, but we often just stop the comparison at quarterback. Like, think about some of these undrafted free agents that have gone on to have Hall of Fame, or at least, multiple Pro Bowls, multiple All Pros. Like, there's guys that come into the league and, that it happens. It's not like, oh, this happened once and it's never happened again. I'm only going to think of Vikings because it's just easier for me. But like John Randall was UDFA. He's a Hall of Famer. And this happened. I'm trying to think of the tight end that was drafted or not drafted or drafted lowly. God, it's gonna escape me down. But I mean, guys can come from small programs. Guys can come from later rounds. Guys can come from UDFAs and really maybe just grow into it a little bit. Maybe they didn't have the right coach, the right coaching, the right nutrition, the right weightlifting plan, and it just takes a little spark to get them there. Like this isn't something that was fleeting, and it's like, oh, we're never going to see a Brady again. We might see a Brady, every 25 years. We're just like, oh, this guy was a really low draft pick, and he's actually going to turn out to be a really good quarterback.
Yeah, we might be in effectively the year one of it now. Like, it's not crazy. Honestly, this system is better than Brady went into, and with Charlie Weiss, and the weapons on this team are better than Brady had to work with. The defense is probably not as good as those Pats defenses were that carried them to their first 2 Super Bowls. And
they had like multiple Hall of Famers in the defensive backfield at some point.
Yeah. But like ultimately, you look back on that era, was Belichick like that much better than the rest of the coaches? Yes. Yes, he was. Like clearly. Like, could Shanahan be that much better than the rest of the coaches right now? Sure. Like certainly from a scheme standpoint, maybe not an in-game decision-making standpoint. And ultimately, that might
hold. Did you see that tweet? No. Someone dropped it in the Discord. There was a picture of like Shanahan and Barry.
Oh, I did see. Yeah,
and it says the world's greatest swordsman. The world's greatest swordsman does not fear the second greatest swordsman. He fears the worst because he doesn't know what the hell that guy's going to do.
This is Joe Barry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very much a part of that handicap. Believe me. Yes. Anyway,
Purdy could use that playoff bonus money. He lives in San Francisco, where it's like $4,800 a month to split an apartment with someone, and he's not getting that first round.
Do his parents back home on the farm need the money to save the farm? I don't think. Do they?
Honestly, it looked like they had a pretty big farm.
Okay. Okay.
I think they're well off. That looked like a pretty new combine. Go look up anyone who doesn't farm or look into that. Know much about that. Go look what a combine costs, because it's obscene. That's why small farms aren't making it. Kind of just getting bought up. But Purdy's brother probably makes more in NIL money. I don't know if he's getting big NIL money, but he exists.
Is he gonna get the starting job in Nebraska at some point, or is he
still at Nebraska? This is the time of year where everyone switched teams. The college football offseason has turned into the NBA offseason for me.
Everybody's confusing. Okay. Well, let's pop into Houston Balto. Do you want to you set this one up and make the case for why 9.5 is a reasonable fare?
The rest is important. The rest and the health. And obviously we gotta look at some of these injuries for Baltimore. That's the most annoying thing about the two teams, the buys, that we talked about. Hey, no one's talking about the Niners and Ravens. Also, no one's giving us injury reports in the week off. Like, you're not getting any information on. Basically, all we got last week was, hey, Mark Andrews is practicing, which is obviously massive. He was a full go today. That matters a lot. I mean, he's their best receiver. I don't care how much better OBJ has played. I don't care about the younger guys. Like, he is their best receiver. He's been missing for quite a while here. So between the rest, getting him back, and the Houston injuries, I'm still at like 10 points here. And I'm fine with that. And a lot of it is I've upgraded Houston. I've left Baltimore pretty much where they're at with a little bit of you can't give a huge bump for a lot of tight ends, but Mark Andrews being back in this offense definitely changes how I feel about this offensive efficiency. So they get a little bump, and I'm kind of right on this number. This total's been bet down. And part of that is basically all the games that aren't in Detroit. The weather might be a factor here. It's looking like a really shitty rainy night in San Francisco. It's looking very windy and gross in Baltimore. And then, Buffalo's Buffalo, man.
Yeah, the weather's a factor. I guess I agree with you. The injury report, and we do have, I guess, more meaningful injury reports than we normally have on a Wednesday when we do this show with the Saturday games. The Ravens injury report generally looks good. Marlon Humphrey, DNP, is worth keeping an eye on because Nico Collins is good enough to really hurt that defense if you don't have a good CB1. Jadeveon Clowney, DNP for illness, is worth keeping an eye on because they are going to need a pass rush to be effective in this one. But basically everybody else is trending like the way you want them to. Zay Flowers is on record. He's going to play. Mark Andrews, I think, is going to go. So you should have a full strength offense. The Houston Texans defense is the opposite. Everybody's hurt and they're trending the wrong way. I haven't dug into what this is based on a walkthrough and not actually instructive, but Will Anderson downgraded from limited to DNP.
Rankins, DNP,
Grenard downgraded from limited to DNP. Lee Collins is limited, so he probably goes. Jerry Hughes is a DNP. I'd be blown away if he goes. So you're all of a sudden your D line looks, I mean, and we said this last week too. Like that was the deal against the Browns as well. Like all these guys were missing practice. It was the deal against the Colts. Like they're not healthy. Like I don't know if they're playing games and most of these guys end up going. They're just not at full strength or what. But yeah, the injury report for the Texans looks bad again. Texans O-line generally at full strength. That's good. Texans wide receiver room getting healthier. That's good.
All these left tackles are just constantly on the injury report. They're banged up. They're left tackles. That's how it works. It's like Armstead, Teron Armstead or Williams. We see these guys. It's like Tunsil's going to be on the report, but he's probably going to play.
Okay.
Like you said, Zay Flowers has come out and said that he's good. He's playing. Humphrey missing practice today is problematic. I put him in probably under 50% to play, and by probably like 30%. Like it's a calf injury. If he can't push off, if he can't, change directions on that leg because his calf is injured, he'd probably be more of a liability out there anyway. So that sucks. Although he did not play in when these teams went at it last time. He was out. He's missed like 8 games this year.
It was noted
by
Noah
Brown on the IR.
Robert Woods.
Robert Woods probably goes.
Yeah, I think Woods goes. Mechie's, is obviously going to play, but I don't know how impactful he's going to be. Dalton Schultz is going to play. He matters surely, but Nico Collins is really kind of the key for that offense right now, and he's good to go. So, okay, so
Perriman practiced, correct? He left with a rib injury, but that was one of those where they said after the game it didn't look too bad.
Yeah, I believe he's okay. The other guy was was limited, but I think he'll go too. It was not Perriman, Blake Cashman. Worth keeping. I mean, basically everybody on the defense except for
Eden Prairie
is hurt. Yeah. So I'm looking at a couple of key matchups here that I'd like your opinion on. The Texans offensive line, I think, is solid. They're at full strength. They've done a great job of protecting. I
want to give Stroud more credit than them, because they weren't expected to be great.
Sure.
And I think the metrics I think he's making them look better than they actually are. But who cares? Who cares who?
Yeah, they just passed the toughest test. They just went up against the D-line monsters from Cleveland, and they held.
I want to give Slowick. As long as I'm sorry if any of the 5 offensive linemen for the Texans are listening. I'm sorry. You guys have been okay, but I do want to give Slowick credit. I went back and watched parts of that too, and it's just like they put together a game plan that purposely, kind of just put Garrett, in a blender a lot.
Yeah.
Put the guys where they couldn't just speed rush, they couldn't power rush to the quarterback. They were making them change directions a lot. There was obviously you can use that against everybody, and it's very effective. But you really need that to work when you have Myles Garrett on the field. So if they can do similar stuff, that offensive line is going to hold up well again.
Yeah, and I think the key, your CJ Stroud is maybe the point that you really wanted to make, and I agree, which is that he's incredible at eluding pressure. He's incredible at stepping up in the pocket that's collapsing and still delivering pinpoint passes downfield. CJ Stroud is incredible at completing passes to the most difficult part of the field to complete passes in, which is along the sidelines, 11 to 25 yards down the field. And if you are consistently doing that, your ability to sustain drives is unlocked, because 3rd and long doesn't affect you the way it affects everyone else, right? And so you're just going to have more successful drives. You're going to have more opportunities for points. And I think ultimately the kind of the secret sauce of the Ravens defense this year has been the versatility of the linebackers, particularly Roquan Smith. It's been the ability of
combo of that and Hamilton, I think.
Yeah, Hamilton.
Between the coverage and the crashing down to play in the box from all the linebackers and Hamilton.
Absolutely agreed. And then combine that with McDonald's, his simulated pressures and just in general confusing the quarterback pre-snap. I think the strengths of the Ravens defense are a little bit neutralized in terms of where They where the Texans are good at attacking. I would expect the Texans' run game is not going to be especially successful in this one, but I also don't think CJ Stroud's going to get sacked much. I think there is.
It's going to come down to the Baltimore coverage. Like
it's going to come down to their coverage.
I don't know that they're going to be able to harass him enough to put him on his back a bunch, to hit him a bunch. They might get some licks after the ball's gone, but yeah, it's going to come down to the coverage scheme. It's going to come to how McDonald's is able to put that together. And yeah, I guess, obviously we'll see what Slowick can do here a second week. I don't know if he, kept a little powder dry for this one. Seemed like like I said, some of the plays that were running, that wasn't stuff we saw. I mean, some of that stuff wasn't stuff we saw during the year, and that's good for you if you have some extra stuff you can save or put together for a playoff game and make Myles Garrett and a very good defense look bad. But to do it again for a second straight week, for a second straight game
on the road,
resting on the road
with wind
at your home in a tough conditions, a team that you lost to, and granted Stroud is a different quarterback than he was then. But
do you remember what the ingredients were for why Stroud was such a hot fade against the Jets?
I mean, that defense was playing really, really well.
And were like all the wide receivers were hurt, combined with the bad weather, combined with being on the road. There were like 10 things that all mattered. Yeah, that all kind of came together.
The wide receivers have been in and out all year. That was probably a big part of it. That defense was playing good all year. I don't think we really believed in like his sack avoidance and his pressure avoidance being super sustainable yet.
He got hurt in that game too.
There was a few games early where it's like, well, this looks good, but can he do it on a cold night in Baltimore?
Yeah, he got sacked 4 times in that game. His top targets were shit, man.
Here's a good point.
All of this players together.
I feel like there was a stretch of games before it where they hadn't played a decent defense.
Yeah. That's probably true. It was a huge step up. Yeah, he had Collins only targeted him once. Maybe Collins got hurt in that game. Noah Brown targeted him 5 times, no catches. John Mechie got targeted 5 times, 1 catch. Robert Woods 3 targets, 1 catch. So he wasn't able to connect with the wide receivers at all in that game. Yeah, so
I do want to point something out too. Somebody brought up this. I have to scroll back. Someone was asking about Tunsil false starting a bunch. This is something weird I've noticed this year, and I don't know if I've spoke about it yet, but it's crazy how there's been this shift to, we're going to call offensive offsides a bunch, to a huge number compared to previous years.
Yeah.
But this is happening all over the league where they're letting tackles kind of move a little early, sometimes even guards, where one whole side of the line is moving a half tick early, and they're not calling a lot of that. Like, clearly if a guy jumps well before the snap count, they're gonna have to call that. But these guys that are getting these like half beat jumps, it's not just Tunsil, it's all over. I don't know if they de-emphasize that or what. It's something to watch for, because he does get away with it.
Yeah, I know. It's like it feels like they shifted the rule. Like, how they're not going to call delay of game when the clock hits 0.
Yeah,
they're going to be like 0 end to beat.
0 Mississippi.
0 Mississippi. Now it's kind of that sort of feeling where it's like, it was close. We'll let it all out.
He timed it out. It's just good timing.
Yeah. But honestly, like, considering how bad quarterback play was this year and how good pass rushers were, I'm fine with the league kind of shifting in that direction. Anyway, okay, so I guess there's definitely scope for Houston to kind of be underwhelming here. Sure, certainly. And I think, with the injuries to the Houston defense, there's scope for, for Baltimore to do whatever they want. I do think, though, that, the Houston defense, even with injuries, has improved gradually over the tail end of this season, I think. That there was defense was optional in the first half of that Browns game, but the adjustments they made into the second half were very good. Derek Stingley is definitely a guy that can take away wide receiver 1 if it's or half the field if it's OBJ and Zay Flowers operating on one half of the field. Mark Andrews being reintegrated might have a couple of hiccups because the best of the Ravens offense came without him this year, which is kind of weird. Certainly the rushing attack is very, very good, anchored by a really, really good offensive line right now for the Ravens. So
despite the scoreboard, Njoku still looks pretty good.
Sure.
Andrews will get his matchups.
Sure. So I bet on the Texans. I don't feel great about it. My fare is 7.5. I played 9.5. I get it. We've kind of made the other side of the case, which is yes, the Ravens are clearly better. They probably
it's just so
will
many
win.
points.
They probably
That's the
should
whole
win.
handicap. It's so
It's
many
just too many points. Yeah.
And I think there's just a reluctance in the market makers to give Houston a big enough adjustment off of one game, where that maybe they said like some of the things I said, like, hey, did Slowick leave any powder dry? Does he have this in his bag a second straight week on the road against a better team, against a better coach team? No disrespect to, what we have in Cleveland, but Harbaugh and that gang have kind of earned it this year. So
yeah,
that's the handicap. It's too many points. And
Yeah.
I do like this under as well, even without the weather.
Did you have the same sense that I had that Baltimore's defense started showing some cracks down the stretch? Like particularly like the Rams game.
And some of that too is just Humphrey was never in, and you had Hamilton who was banged up a little. I think that mattered, and teams that were able to protect the quarterback and not succumb to any of the pressure, or like you said, the implied pressures that make them change things up and put themselves into bad matchups with their receivers. It's a team that can move on a Baltimore defense. So I don't expect. The more I look at it, like the fact that it's a Saturday game, there's only one more practice really tomorrow, Thursday. You're not going to have a Friday practice. If anything, it's just meetings walkthrough. So if Humphrey doesn't practice tomorrow, it's like 3 weeks with no practice. Like
Sure.
you drop him to like 10%.
That sounds right.
Point.
Yeah, you got to guess at
it's Ronald Darby again.
If I take out the million turnovers that the Ravens defense got against San Francisco, you want to guess what their defense ranks EPA per play from week 10 on for the Ravens?
Yeah, I hate pulling out turnovers, because in games like that, those turnovers aren't luck or variance. Those turnovers are a product of the scoreboard and how that other team has to play.
In this Niners game?
That's what in the Niners game where they were beating them.
Yeah, but the turnovers they actually got, like there were turnover-worthy plays they didn't get when the Niners were pressing.
That's what I'm saying. The fact that they had to play that kind of
the ball up in the air and the other guy catching it, and the hitting him when the guy is going for the catch. I don't know.
For sure. I mean that batted ball was Purdy probably taking 2 extra beats where he shouldn't have. Like,
just play.
Granted,
just play,
it's a little bit of luck. I know.
Just play along. EPA per play from week 10 on for the Ravens defense without turnovers was what?
Rank?
Yeah.
18th.
Yeah, very close. 19th. Just behind San Francisco. Yeah, just behind San Francisco and the Chargers. That little cluster down there. Are you
washing out any garbage time or not?
No to garbage time. And there wasn't a ton of garbage time for the Ravens in that stretch, I guess, except for the Dolphins game. But I don't know. I think there's a. Let me. I
don't know. I would argue that the Ravens had a bunch of garbage time.
Let me put turnovers back in
within the game where it was like, oh, we're up by 3 scores. Oh, we're not anymore.
Yeah, right. That's fair. If you put turnovers in, they move up to
horrible garbage time team.
You put turnovers back in, they move up to 10th.
Okay, that's fair. I think they're at their peak. They're a top 12 offense or defense. Yeah. Okay. So it's just just eye test and in particular kind of looking at the way some of those games went and how they performed relative to market defensively against some key teams. Most notably really the Browns game where they blew the lead, and the Rams game where the Rams realistically could have beat them. Those 2 games felt like there was a scope there for the Ravens to get popped, and I don't know if it's been I guess final thoughts on this game and we can move on. We have not seen the Ravens lay an egg in freaking forever. They have not played a poor game going back to the loss to the Browns 33-31 week 10, where they were playing a beaten up Deshaun Watson and they had a healthy lead and they could not close the door. And even that wasn't that bad of a game because their offense scored 31 points against the Browns. They really haven't had a stinker going back to like week 5 where they lost to the Steelers in the game where they had a bunch of weird fumbles and Lamar threw the pick in the end zone and blah, 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 blah. So it's been a long time since we've seen the Ravens not look great. And I think because of that, there is a tendency to, hey, they played great again. Well, it's hard for me to downgrade.
They played great again. Right? Like I think we're at the point now where they've been elevated to the point where they're overrated. And I'm only at 7.5 here, not 9.5. And I think that's not a huge edge, but I think you can only really look
And
dog.
I think that's why I'm not betting them as well, Drew, because you can't downgrade a team because you're waiting for a stinker to happen. Like, oh, they're due. They've played.
No question.
It's silly. It's silly. So
you have to ask yourself, why am I upgrading them again? Like, how many times in a row have I upgraded them?
But the other side of that coin is, I'm likely at the top of the market for Baltimore. Like, even if they have another really good game, I'm not upgrading them again. This is about as high as
I don't know who this guy is.
Them.
He is just chirping away. Do whatever you want in the comments, man. You obviously love the Ravens. You love the Ravens in this game. That's fine. My point isn't that they are due for a bad game. My point is that so many good games in a row are literally so many good games in a row. You literally end up elevating a rating to the point where it's not really a fair rating anymore.
Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm at the peak of their market. I don't think I want to bet any team when I have them at the peak of their market.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I completely agree. I completely agree.
I have a 10. I'm not betting it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Green Bay.
All right.
This is a playoff game I feel like we've seen.
It is definitely
a bunch of times.
Yeah. The last time they played, it was a playoff game.
Yeah.
And Green Bay lost at home as the 1 seed in an absolute head scratcher of how did this happen. Green Bay was 6 or 7 point favorites in that one. Aaron Rodgers was your MVP. They had a fully healthy team. It was a cold, snowy-ish night in Green Bay, and San Francisco went in there and they took care of business with a blocked punt at the end of that contest.
That was kind of at the stretch. If anyone remembers that stretch of Green Bay has a good offense, Green Bay kind of has a good defense. Green Bay's special team is a liability of Jackson Mahomes proportions. Like, that was a really rough stretch for them when they were like, I don't know what their special teams EPA play given up was, but it was rough.
Very good.
And then I'm pretty sure the next day they fired like the special teams coordinator, right?
I think they did. Yeah. I'm sure they did.
Kev, I'm waiting to get Kev's opinion on this game, see who he likes.
Okay. Who's Kev? He likes the Packers. He likes the Packers. All right. The other kind of meaningful playoff game between these two teams was again a Rodgers NFC Championship game, 2020. This was one of the most lopsided beatdowns I can remember.
It was like a 7 too. I mean, it was not a huge
6, 7. It wasn't a big number, but the Niners, I believe, it won and covered going away in that one with 38 points scored. If from memory, there was something like 42 rush attempts for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like Raheem Mostert, I think, scored.
It would have been Mostert.
Yeah, it was just an absolute run it down their throats. These guys can't defend the run. We're just gonna absolutely push them off line of scrimmage and win this way. And it was impressive. So now this is a double revenge.
Hyperbole, Nick, but yeah, Jimmy didn't have to do a ton.
6 times. Yeah. I think now I want to look it up what the number was. But yeah, so now this is where I'm going with this. This is a double revenge game, Andy.
Are we doing double revenge?
No, we're not doing a double revenge game. No, I think let's put this in a neutral weather environment because we don't really know what the weather is going to be like. This is probably like an absolute shootout, right? Like a Joe Barry defense up against the Kyle Shanahan offense is not a fair fight. It's not.
No.
Jair Alexander downgraded from limited to DNP this week. Tuesday, it turned out and I know this, Tuesday was a estimation. Wednesday was a walkthrough. He was estimated on Tuesday, DNP'd on Wednesday. That does not suggest that Jair Alexander will play.
It suggests he lied to coaches on Tuesday.
Or the coaches were just like, who the fuck knows? Maybe. And then Wednesday was like, oh yeah, no, we can't even make a walkthrough.
Your ankle's disgusting.
Not good. Not good. It sounds like everybody else that kind of matters is probably going to play. Kingsley Enagbare, unexpected to go. I would expect that Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, and Preston Smith will all go. I expect that Darnell Savage will play. Those guys all matter a lot. And I think they're going to go. I hope they're going to go. Quay Walker.
And I haven't got confirmation, but the Enagbare was likely a ACL tear.
Yeah, I don't think he's...
McDuffie had a stinger. Those are the kind of things that can linger a little, but I don't know. We'll see.
Tough to say. Aaron Jones, I expect to play. Jenkins, I expect to go.
AJ Dillon can sit if he wants. That's fine.
Interestingly, Christian Watson may be a surprise available, which would be interesting. I think the Niners are very healthy effectively. They had a bunch of questions swirling about their secondary, particularly the fact that both safeties were question marks. Both backup safeties were question mark. They have 4 safeties on the injury report. Brown, Gibson, both full participants they're going to play. And then their backups, Odom and Ryan, full and limited, are probably going to be fine. Ambry Thomas matters a ton too, cornerback. He's going to probably go. Arik Armstead, defensive tackle, we're going to see him make a grand return. And then on the offensive side, Kittle looks fine. McCaffrey's a full go. Trent Williams is going to be fine. I actually don't think there's really anyone likely to miss besides Cleveland Farrell, and he matters. We need that.
Yeah, not a ton. I was keeping an eye on Gibson. Gibson, just because of the secondary, can't afford to be any more injured. Obviously, Armstead matters. And then, like you said, Ambry Thomas, CMC is fine. Perfect timing for an injury for him. He got to rest it several weeks with the meaningless game for the Niners, semi-meaningless for the Rams. He got to rest that. He had to rest last week. That calf is fine, I guess. So Jimmy threw it 8 times for 6 completions. I feel like Nick went and looked this up, so I'm gonna trust him on this. That's pretty funny.
That's not very much.
That is pretty funny.
And honestly, that was 2 weeks in a row because they put him in a bottle against the Vikings the previous week, right? Yeah. They put him on ice 2 weeks in a row, from what I remember. Or maybe he wasn't very good the week before. I don't really remember how that sequence went. The prior week, Jimmy Garoppolo was 11 of 19 for 131 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. The next week he was 6 of 8 for 77 yards, no touchdowns.
We have a prop.
Runs.
We have a prop.
Amazing.
Somebody wants to bet. Someone called Sports Dogma.
Sure.
Says he has a strong projection for Love under 249 total passing yards.
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one. Aaron Jones game, maybe.
There's a specific game state that gets you there that I don't know. I don't know how likely that is, but I also don't do player props, so I'm not going to disagree. Here's kind of my major handicap for this game. Niners are going to get their points here. The entire question for covering and or threatening to win for the Packers is, can they answer? And honestly, the tape that the Ravens put together have how their offense attacked the Niners defense on Christmas, the tape of how the Cardinals did it. Like there's a clear and obvious like breadcrumbs for Matt LaFleur to pick up and kind of coach his young team to be competitive in this one. Ultimately, with a young team like this, the Packers, I will note, have been playing their very, very, very best football at the end of the year. And their 2 best games this season came in very, very similar game states where they generated a huge lead. Their defense contributed some points, and then they kept their foot on the gas and pulled away and then ultimately win. I'm, of course, referring to the Thanksgiving win in Detroit and the win last week in Dallas. If a different game state materializes where this is, okay, you guys are down a bunch and now you got to drive and you got to score, and it's wet conditions and the Niners defense is fully rested and healthy, and the pass rush is obviously likely to be thwarted early, but maybe ultimately in a must pass, it's tough to keep those guys at bay forever. I think there's definitely game states where the Niners, win comfortably, but game states where the Packers keep up. Is that kind of your thought process on how this could break?
Yeah, although just watching what we saw from LaFleur and, obviously Love and the game plan, the fact that they kept their foot on the gas pedal, I don't know if that was super. Like I said, I love, it's better than 99% chance to win is 100, obviously, but again, saving something for another good team here. If we get any sort of offensive output like that, this 50.5 is a bad number. I mean, like you said, the Niners just are going to get theirs. It's just the percentage of games where this Niners team doesn't get to at least like 28. I don't know. It seems pretty low based on the matchup between Shanahan having this much time and the Joe Barry defense that we've seen for the past couple of years, especially down the stretch outside of the Bears game and Dak throwing it to the wrong color jerseys a couple times. And then, I mean, even then, it's hard to rate how the garbage time stuff was because Dallas wasn't garbage time awful early, got early late, or got late early that one. So I think the weather is the only thing holding this total down because it's looking like it's going to be rainy. And again, sometimes rain isn't enough to really affect the offense. There are times where rain without wind is actually good for the offense as long as it's not torrential and they're still able to, we're not seeing a lot of drops because of wet balls or slipping turnovers. I guess it depends where the turnovers are, but I mean, there's a case to be made for wet conditions hurt the defensive pass rush. Wet conditions make secondary members fall down. And I really kind of want to fade this rain and play this over because I'm a believer in Green Bay. I just worry that this number is probably about right too, as far as just I don't know how they're stopping the Niners. If they put a really good game plan together, like they have a bunch of times this year, and Shanahan's had a lot of time. I don't know how much time he actually spent on that Rams game. You don't know who you're playing yet. You're doing a lot of prep for this team and that, but you can still put your game plan together. You can get your script out there. A defense is still a defense. So I'm leaning to this over even with the weather.
Yeah, Packers defense for what it's worth in that same time sample, removing turnovers, 25th in EPA per play. They managed to beat the Bengals, the Giants, the Commanders, the Cardinals, and then the real dregs, the Eagles and the Seahawks. I would say the for the Packers to cover, they need to go score for a lot of this game.
Shot for shot, baby.
Shot for shot.
Here's another quick point too: is Bruce Lee points out that Jay Love is good against the blitz. I was kind of going in that direction too, but if they are not getting a pass rush and they have to bring extra guys, that's just disaster for a secondary that's banged up and not good to begin with and huffungulous.
Sure.
Which is a word now. So
yes,
I'm probably going to play this over.
Okay. For the Packers to win, I think they need to turn over Purdy.
Twice.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need some short fields. You need a
win.
positive game state.
I mean, both of these big dogs like this, the big dogs need to win the turnover battle. That's almost a prereq to staying in these games like this.
Yeah. I think going back to the Dogma's love under, the two game states that supported love under are the Niners just outright dominating, at which point I'd almost rather just lay an alt spread on the Niners, or a game state where the Niners, or where the Packers are winning, right? Yeah. Like the Packers only managed 275 through the air, and that came with some big explosive plays and keeping their foot on the gas late. It still is. It's a big number for those guys in this condition. So yeah.
For the narratives and the fun of it, I will be cheering for the Packers to pull the upset.
Okay.
And someone pointed this out in the Discord, and I ran with it a little further. Nothing would be a bigger tummy ache for a Lions fan than facing the Packers in the NFC title game. Like this monkey you're on cloud nine for the Lions. You've won this game. You won the division finally. You broke all these long-standing traditions of shithousery.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the penultimate step in winning the big one, and you're up against the divisional foe. Like, oh, we just figured this out. We're finally good, and there's another team in our division that's just as good again. Like they found another quarterback. It's going to be more annoying to play and lose to the Packers in that spot, knowing that like our reign was like
Yes.
2 weeks as the NFC North team.
Does the outcome of this game influence the market opener for Niners hosting the NFC Championship either way? If this is a close game or if it's a blowout, do you think the Niners get downgraded or upgraded, or do we pretty much know? Was that part of the equation pretty well anchored now?
I think it's anchored, especially for me. I'm in the same spot with the Niners that I am with the Ravens.
Sure.
I don't think I can raise them that much more. If they win 69-0, I guess there's something to be said for.
My neutral for the Ravens was for the Niners was always higher because they have a more talented roster, top to bottom. And I haven't upgraded them as much as I've upgraded.
What's your difference between Niners and Baltimore?
About 3 points on a neutral.
See, and I think that's where we're differing. I guess I do have Baltimore higher than most.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. I played some Packers at the price. I played a little bit of Packers money line. Because again, I still think
69 points is 9 touchdowns, 2 field goals.
How did 69 points come up?
I said if they win 69-0.
Oh yeah.
Then we have to
okay. I got. Sorry, I missed that.
Okay. 9 touchdowns, 2 field goals.
San Francisco's team total is 30.5. They got to get to 31 to meet expectations.
I know. I bet a big team total last week. I don't know if I have the appetite
you got it
again.
The Cowboys made it sweaty, but they got to 32. All right. Well, Packers team total is 20.
Might just bet that again. I'll have a little bit of that. If I'm betting the over, you're already presupposing that Green Bay can get you some help. I think you put a little bit on that as well. So I'll probably have the over and the Green Bay team total over.
Yeah. So
if nothing else, like it's a playoff game, Drew. We don't see this. Oh, let's pack it in for we're losing by 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Let's run the ball late. Like you don't do any of that. Obviously, the same thing with Dallas. We saw them continuing, even though theirs was very futile.
So before accounting for injuries, because I didn't know, my fair was 7 on this game, but I'm actually now closer to 7.5, downgrading the Packers a little bit, upgrading the Niners a little bit for expected availability of some supporting cast. My fair on the money line for both Green Bay and Houston are both right around 35%, a little under. So give each one about a third of a chance. We'll see.
And then, just situationally, obviously another back-to-back travel spot, a little bit of a bump for Niners, but I'm pretty much on market here after some adjustments.
Okay. Move to Sunday. You want to set up the morning contest?
The morning contest, Tampa Bay. Yeah, this is going to be nice. We're going to get to do our show a little earlier next Sunday. We'll do the kind of the recap thing. Gosh, it's gonna be like 4:00 your time when the second game is rolling through. So Tampa Bay looked pretty good, did they not? That was the game that I was scared to bet into. Basically with all the injuries, not knowing if Baker Mayfield is healthy, because we saw what a dinged up Baker looks like against the absolute bottom of the barrel team in Carolina. And, we had all the other injuries on the other side that really did scare me. But right off the bat, it was everybody. I mean, there were David Moore and, Palmer. I mean, guys, it wasn't even just Evans. We missed Evans on a couple big, deep shots, and not by much. It's not as if they were bad throws or bad effort by Evans. It was just a little bit off a couple times. So, like, it was another one maybe compared a little to what we said about KC, is like they probably could have scored more on Philly. Like the Tampa Bay offense was kind of clicking at times, and it's a secondary, it's a defense we've shat on for a month, so maybe that's not super surprising. I think the more surprising part was just how inept we saw from the game plan on both sides for Philly. And I don't want to talk a lot about Philly because they're eliminated. We're looking forward here, so maybe I don't want to say Tampa Bay had it easy because they looked good, but certainly didn't get the best shots of an NFL team, I felt, from either side of the ball. And then Detroit won. They looked very good in the first half. Like we said, both quarterbacks were great in that one, but Detroit was a little shaky in the second half. I don't know, cashing in on drives, keeping drives alive, getting some points. Obviously, both teams maybe played it a little tighter, a little cagier in the second half. And it's still not a good secondary. It's still not a good defense for Detroit. So I don't know. I'm excited to watch this one, but this is another one where I'm kind of close. I'm going to be hammering some props here. I'm at what are we at for a market right now? We still just plopped on the 6. There's some people. Yeah, I'm 3.
Somebody Circa moved to 7 at one point. Is that was a funny business? Oh no, they're still at 7.
So this is another one too where I said I was just gonna be I'm gonna be at 6 and change. You thought I was high. There's some other people that are very adamant that this number is wrong.
I said you were high.
I thought you did. Maybe it was the other ones. I don't know. Where do you sit on this one? I'm 7. At 6.2.
I'm at 7.
Well, you're further up than me then.
Yeah.
There's some people that are adamant that this number is a little high, that this adjustment is too big, and Tampa should take money. And we're still early-ish in the cycle. We could see it later in the week. We could see this get swatted and drop down to a 5, 5.5. But
yeah,
for me, this number's fine. This total is probably right where it should be, 48.5, 49. And I'm just really excited to watch this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess Detroit did get kind of tight in the second half there. Ultimately, their first drive was 9 plays, 44 yards. It got shut down by some sacks at the end of the drive. And then they only really had 2 other drives that were both short. Really, the kind of story of the second half, as far as I could tell you, was the Rams had they had a 10-play, 66-yard drive that ate 6 minutes, and they got a field goal, followed by a 13-play, 79-yard drive that ate 6.5 minutes that they got a field goal. Like, that was kind of like, it just shortened the whole second half, like, aggressively. And so I don't really know that I would really say anything other than credit to the Lions defense for their red zone, standing strong in the red zone and forcing those field goals, because if they give up a touchdown on either one of those drives, the game's over.
They were 0 for the Rams went 0 for 3. Yeah,
that was the game. But ultimately, like, everything else about the Lions offense was elite in that game overall. 6.1 yards per play is solid. They didn't turn the ball over.
And that's the thing, Drew, like we said, they didn't have very many good, you had a long play in the second half, but for the most part, there was a lot of bad and, what do you want to say? Unsuccessful, when you're talking about success rate, unsuccessful plays, and they still, ended the game with over 6 yards per play. So, it was a good game overall. They did. They could have given me a little more in the second half offensively.
Yeah, my numbers, by the way, for both of these teams have not been adjusted. I didn't adjusting neutral adjustments for both the Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, based on seeing what we saw and the injuries for those games. I don't even know that you should be adjusting teams much at all anymore unless there's meaningful injuries. Like, there really is. You should have a pretty static rating, I think, on a lot of these teams at this point. And injuries, rest, and almost everything about coming to a number that's broadly off of neutral is going to be matchup based, I think. And that's really kind of where I fall on this particular game and why I like the Lions. I think you can basically zero this entire handicap down to Todd Bowles' defense being absolutely the perfect matchup at the perfect time to frustrate the Eagles.
Yeah, the blitzing was, it was very
perfect.
Bowlesian. But
hand in glove.
Like,
that was hand in glove.
Every time it worked. Every time it felt like
that was hand in glove. How you want to defend Philly, and it was absolutely perfect. Hand in glove. How you want to attack the Todd Bowles defense is what the Lions do, which is good pass protection, good help blocking, and have 4 guys that can win their one-on-ones down the field. And I think ultimately the leaving the cornerbacks and safeties on islands against William, against Amon-Ra St. Brown, Williams, and Reynolds and Laporta is a problem. And realistically, if this is a blitz-heavy approach by Todd Bowles, I think the Buccaneers defense gets absolutely cooked. Lions have faced 2 relatively blitz friendly teams recently, it was the Vikings. Well, two of the last 3 weeks of the season.
I was going to say, is it the same team?
It's 30 in both games.
Yeah.
You go back further. They had a good success rate against the Buccaneers at a high blitz rate earlier this season, even without their running backs healthy. And then you look at and that was on the road. And then you look at the game against the Broncos was the other kind of high blitz rate game they faced. They scored 42 points. So it's, to me at least, this Lions team is not the team you want to do. You know, you want Todd Bowles to run his fastball type of defense, and that's all he does is throw fastballs. So I think the Buccaneers defense is going to have a long day in this one.
Kind of a supporting point there. And I do want to say that Antoine Winfield has continued to, improve his game and his craft.
Sure.
And he's going to be a good player for a long time in this game. And maybe he's not with this team forever, but the Todd Bowles blitzing is not something he wouldn't do otherwise, but it is kind of necessary at times. If you look at, and boy, I know there's different ways to grade out defenses, and PFF grades are kind of under attack today, so I don't know if I want to reference too much of that stuff. But if you look at Davis, you look at Dean, even the other guys who play in the slot or your nickelbacks, they don't grade out well as a secondary outside of Winfield. Like, their corners aren't as good as maybe some people think they are. And it does get a little bit disguised by the fact that sometimes the blitzes just work and hide that fact. Or if you run into a team where the blitzes aren't working, the offensive line is good enough to hold up. You have a quarterback who's playing well, or you just have a scheme through the offensive coordinator that puts you in positions to succeed. Even if you are blitzing, these corners can be beat like rented mules. And I think I did kind of want to take some Tampa straight up, because I think what we saw last week lends itself to a high variance game here. But I really think it's like you're saying. I think it's a bad matchup for the Tampa Bay defense.
Yeah, and I think a negative game state here on the road, Tampa is in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah,
cracks in that pass pro are starting to show. They were elite through 8 weeks, and they've kind of gotten a little worse since. Mayfield holds onto the ball for a long time. He took some key sacks in that Philly game that were, obviously didn't.
One of them was like 20 yards, man.
They were ultimately inconsequential because they were great, but you do that in a closer game or with a deficit, like that's a drive killer. That's a game killer. Same with the drops. Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are still dropping footballs. And like the fact that they won so effortlessly against the Eagles is even greater indictment of the Eagles, I guess.
Anyone who sees, if you've ever seen a tweet or a study or an article that writes about explosive plays, and there's several out there, but just like having even one explosive play in a drive, what it does for that drive as far as points per drive, EPA, and all that, it's the exact opposite of that. Those early down sacks, it's an explosive, it's the negative, it's the inverse of an explosive play. Or if you're facing, especially a big second down sack in a game state where you're playing from behind rather than with the lead. If he does that shit this week, I mean, it's gonna be a rough hang with Tampa. Yeah,
and I think the pass rush for the Lions has an opportunity to win.
Implosive. Oh, I love this implosive play.
Implosive play. Yeah.
Vodzilla's on a heater today.
Yeah. So I think your opportunities for drive killing sacks is real. Your opportunity for turnovers is real. We're not super far removed from Baker Mayfield being an absolute turnover machine in the contest against, what was it, the Saints? I forget where he was just super.
The Saints game was just the whole team looked like hell.
Yeah, so and that maybe you throw that out, maybe you don't. I don't know, but I know that the Lions playing at home and just in general having the easier matchup for their offense to find success in this game has me perfectly fine laying the points with them as a favorite here under 7. So I think this should close 7. We'll see if it does. Tampa Bay. Honestly, Andy,
I think any 7s you see are going to get snapped.
I hate doing this.
I think it's 6.5, man.
I hate doing this, but like, you remember last year when the Giants beat the Vikings?
Yeah.
And for a hot minute, it was like, oh, whoa, the Giants good?
Yeah, and then we had to point out that the Vikings defense was the most horseshit unit in the league.
And ironically, got Daniel Jones paid, and got a bunch of guys, in hot water this year because the expectations were too high. But they get clean. They got their clocks cleaned the next week by the Eagles, and the takeaway from that was, the Vikings suck, but the Giants do too, and they just both happen to make the playoffs. Well, the Eagles sucked, and the Bucks probably do too, and they just both happen to make the playoffs. I think is kind of where I'm at. And I'm glad that
at the end of the season, I still had the Saints power rated slightly higher than Tampa.
Sure,
they were. I think they were my lowest team outside. I think I had Pittsburgh below them.
Okay, so look ahead on the most likely NFC matchup before we move on. Lions head to. I guess here's a question for you. The same question I asked about the Niners. If this is a Lions ass kicking, which knock on wood it will be, biggest thing I staked all week. What does that impact the rate?
It should. It should. I think the manner in which the Lions win this game decides which side of 7 this opens.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
The median side for that should be San Francisco -7 at home.
Okay.
And if the Lions, maybe get a little banged up, maybe don't look so hot doing it, maybe that gets bet up to a 7.5.
Okay.
Lions are very impressive, and it's the shoes on the other foot. And San Francisco, maybe not as much. Maybe you see a 6.5. So it's kind of where I'm at with that number.
If the Lions if the Niners eke against the Packers and the Lions look like world killers.
That's what I'm saying. You get a 6.5.
That's as low as you think it's going to go?
It feels like you'd still take Niners money, man. I wouldn't want to go too far below that. Just you can't to the point of someone wise who said this like 20 minutes ago. You can't go too far off the anchored numbers that we have. We're in the postseason.
This is 20
weeks.
Right. Like, these are mature numbers.
If Debo is knocked out, somebody rips a knee up that's important, CMC's calf gives out right away, then we can open a number. But healthy team versus healthy team, 6.5 to 7.5, I think.
Okay. I tend to agree, and I would probably lay up to 7 with the Niners, but health will determine a lot of that, I suppose.
Kansas City Buffalo?
Yeah, this is a weird one. You ever handicap one of these before?
So the Buffalo injury stuff was massive coming into the week. We're sitting at right now, let's just use the bookmaker numbers, 2.5, 45. It's come down off the 3 that it's bounced back and forth to, depending. The markets again are weird this time of year because you get some soft books that decide to open early, and those aren't real numbers, but they're real numbers to the people who snatch them up. And again, we congratulate you guys for having good numbers and being able to snag a number that's clearly off market and getting some good prices early on some of these books that are just throwing caution to the wind on Sunday nights at lower limits. But another one where the total got bet up a little bit back to 45. And the more I look at this one, it's kind of one of those same spots where do I trust either one of these teams? Because it depends how you want to spin your narrative, because I've heard 2 people do it the exact same thing, but in opposite directions with Kansas City. They said, hey, Kansas City, and this is something that we said this Sunday as well, but I heard other people say Kansas City was moving the ball nice in a little bit better luck in the red zone or a few more third down plays, and they score 40 points. And then there's the opposite side of that where, hey, this is maybe a little bit of a trend because we saw it against Cincinnati. We certainly saw it against the Raiders. This team is struggling in the red zone right now to get things moving. This is struggling to finish drives for the most part. And they got the win, but they were in such a good situational spot. I don't know that it told us a ton about Kansas City. I think it told us a ton about, a Kansas City team that's playing a team without a pass rush and a quarterback who was clearly uncomfortable and, just say it, trash all day long. So I don't know, playing the hottest team now, that's not that much has really changed. They just have had better results. They've gotten some nice wins. The week 18 game was nice to get that done. Obviously, from a team that could have missed the playoffs, still to being the 2 seed, getting a home game, getting another home game. But it's probably going to come down to both pass rushes and how the secondary plays the number ones here. Diggs has been a bit of a mystery for me. I'd like to hear your opinion on. I don't want to go full out and do the whole what's wrong with Stephon Diggs? Is Stephon Diggs not, is he not happy? But it's a different kind of offense than what we've seen in the past. It's always been why can't we get Diggs number 2? He's having to carry so much. Now this offense is quite a bit different from what we've seen in previous years, I think. And I guess I want to hear how you think that matches up against the Kansas City defense, who can pass rush, who has looked better in the linebacking, not only from in the box, but in coverage too. And has a Snead who had a nice game, man.
Yeah. I think the limitations of Diggs are pretty well evident. Last half of this year, he just hasn't been anywhere close to the same impactful player for whatever reason. He's a guy that he walks to the beat of his own drum. So it could be just slippage in quality of play. It could be an injury. It could be just he didn't really care for Buffalo anymore. I have no clue. But I would say I guess the only kind of high confidence take I have for this game is that I think the market is low on Chiefs defense, and the market is high on Bills offense. And that to me says if there's one outcome that I would be the most surprised by, it would be the Buffalo Bills scoring 35. Looking real good, right? I don't think there's really a ton of game outcome here where it comes easy for the Bills.
I'm kind of with you, but for both sides. I don't see this.
So that's the thing. Okay,
I don't see this game.
Hold on.
I have it as a close game.
So I think I agree. It's a close game. But yeah, let's kind of put the Bills' output in terms of a score in a bottle, 17-24, right? I think that's kind of a pretty tight range for where the Bills land, right? The Chiefs, I have a very different kind of take on because of the injuries to the Bills.
Sure.
The Bills really right now only have a healthy unit with their front four. Those guys are neutralized by decent pass pro for the Chiefs. They're neutralized by good scrambling from Mahomes. They're probably going to be okay stopping the run, maybe, but the linebacker level is really what you circle in red if you are game planning Andy Reid, right? Andy Reid is okay, this was where you wanted to attack them in the middle of the season after they lost Milano and didn't have the answers at that level. They got answers at the level by 2 guys who then got hurt. Those 2 guys, and if you're watching, I would watch very carefully for these injury reports and see how this plays out. But Dodson and Bernard matter a ton in this particular game because they occupy a very important part of the field where the screen game for the Chiefs could be absolutely deadly, where Travis Kelce could be extremely effective, and where scrambling Mahomes could be, just a nightmare to try to tackle, right? And so, if Dodson and Bernard are not playing, then I don't know how the Bills construct their defense for this game. They may have safeties playing linebackers and stuff like that. I fell out of my chair seeing AJ Klein running around out there against the Steelers. Didn't know he was on the roster. It realistically is a problem if you don't have anyone at that level who can match up with what Andy Reid has very good answers for, which is screen game and tight end stuff over that part of the field. So with that said, I think the Chiefs can sustain drives. I don't know that they're going to be any good in the red zone. Their red zone against Miami was concerning. They might be kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns. That's entirely possible. They're definitely going to be dropping passes. I don't know that Rice has necessarily a great matchup in this one because Rasul Douglas I'm expecting to go, and he's going to get help from good safeties over the top. So it's Rice may be a little bit underwhelming in this contest, but I guess what I'm getting at is if the Chiefs succeed in the red zone early in this one, and then I think this turns into classic Andy Reid just destroys the game in the second half with sustained drives, and you never see the ball back.
Yeah, the Bills get 3 drives in the second half.
Yeah,
and they basically have to score 14 points on those 3 drives, otherwise the game is not going their way. And there is something to what we saw from Miami and the fact that the pass rush was just non-existent for big parts of the game, and yet they were able to hold up in the red zone. Because I don't want to say pass rush matters less, but it does become easier for the secondary to defend in tighter spaces. There's less field to defend, and it becomes less of a problem that Mahomes can wander around back there at will, because they are able to put together some coverage when they have not only the sidelines but the back end zone, the back of the end zone to use with some extra defenders, what have you. So I think even if the Bills aren't getting a pass rush, we probably see some similar red zone, frustration from Kansas City. I think this is a low scoring game that comes down to it. And it feels, this is silly to say, but it just feels like whoever wins the first half kind of takes this, because of just what you said, what Kansas City can do with the lead in the second half, what they have done all year. And then how we've seen Kansas City look coming from behind against basically anybody. Double result.
Yeah, double result. Hey, I got to add to that the idea of if this is a positive game state for the Bills, they can put it away on the ground.
Yeah,
people
can run in Kansas City.
You absolutely could put it away on the ground.
We saw that a month ago where they just, hey, it doesn't even matter if our running backs are good. Hey, Cook, just keep doing it. And it does turn into whoever is the first half is just massive. The scripted drives, not forcing the ball and having some bad Josh Allen turnover. If he has a couple of ugly turnovers or some bad things happen, takes a bad sack on third down in the first half, it might be the game.
Yeah. Second half under blind. Yeah, that's where I'm at, Vodzilla. Yep.
The second half under is well on the radar.
I guess the one thing that's worth bringing up, because it came up a couple of times, it's been kicked around online by some high profile accounts who I like. This is a rematch of a game that changed the OT rules.
Yeah. Oh God.
The OT rules were changed. A touchdown does not end the game.
What happened?
It was I think it was this round and these teams.
It was divisional round.
Yeah. Pretty sure.
Because if Buffalo won that, they were winning the next week and probably the week after.
Yeah, I think they were.
And you can't be mad because you had the Rams.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
You were.
I'm long over that. But no, the rules were changed for overtime. We have not yet seen it in action to matter, so we don't really, it's not cemented in people's brains yet. The winning team scores a touchdown, the opposing offense gets one possession to answer, and then it is sudden death after that. So the actual game theory about whether you take the kick or receive or pick your,
I hope we see an overtime game just to see the game theory.
We don't. We have no idea how teams have modeled this out, what they think the optimal theory is. A lot of people think that if you get the ball second and you have conceded a touchdown, that your win probability is higher going for 2 than it is kicking the ball to them in a tie game. Because it is sudden death. There's a lot of fascinating wrinkles. Just keep that in mind. This is probably, I don't know that we're going to see a tie in any of these games, but if we're going to see a tie in any of the game, this is probably the one, which is why it's come up.
And you choose to play defense. It allows you to play with 4 downs. That's very succinctly put by John Charles.
I love that.
That is the biggest thing. You have you don't have any decisions. I'm going for it on every 4th down because I have to.
But-
Whereas if you're playing first,
Yeah.
you have it. Let's say you have a 4th and inches at like the 38.
Yeah.
That's a very ticklish decision.
You put yourself in harm's way having to go for 2 on your touchdown, though, because
You don't have
want
to.
You don't
have
want
to.
But it's sudden death if you kick it. You're giving it to the other team on the 25-yard line.
You have to weigh your best, the odds of your best 2-point conversion, holding to your defense, holding them to not getting into field goal range. I think you're correct that going for 2 is the optimal decision, but I'm saying you do get to play with the 4 downs, which is massive.
Okay. It's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.
I just plugged in all 4 look aheads. What would most likely, we'll just go with Buffalo. They are the small favorite here. Buffalo at Baltimore. Baltimore by 4.
I'm
little
not
more
there.
than that.
I'm barely over 3 there.
Yeah, I'm at 4.1. I guess I'm obviously much higher in Baltimore than you.
I'm barely over 3 for either one.
And I think I'm lower on Kansas City than you are. So I have Baltimore hosting KC at like 5.8, which is I doubt they would open that high. Although I'm more on market with Baltimore than you are.
I have given 0.0 thought to matchups and what I would actually try to get into on Baltimore versus KC or Buffalo. I just haven't even because this is a coin flip.
Yeah,
but KC Buffalo
obviously the upset. If Houston were to upset, they'd be touchdown dog.
Yeah. Also, if
10 points in Buffalo.
If Buffalo is in that game, do they get any of these guys back?
That's interesting too. If Buffalo does win, they have another week to get some guys healthy.
Yeah, if they do, all of a sudden,
and then I could maybe my 4.1 comes down to a 3.5 if we get several defensive pieces healthy again, and who knows where Baltimore's at. And then Houston traveling to Buffalo or Kansas City would be a 7 to 10 point dog,
right?
And and out of half, I would probably bet Houston as a 10-point dog in Buffalo.
Yeah. What about Houston, KC? Is KC?
Touchdown.
Do you think KC is? I guess
I'd make it a touchdown.
Is your brain going to break if KC hosts the AFC Championship game for the 6th year in a row?
That would piss some people off, wouldn't it? I wouldn't care. Kudos to you guys for doing.
Would that inspire the league to vote for neutral championship games?
Do you think that's actually something that's coming?
It came up last year. If there's a 6th year in a row, it's in KC.
So it came up because of the unfairness that due to the DeMar Hamlin game.
Yep. And
so that's why the bug is out there, and there is some money to be made, I suppose, by having it in it's in Buffalo. No offense to you guys if you live in Buffalo or Kansas City, but there are bigger cities with more events and warmer weather that they can have these games in.
Yeah.
The fact that they're having them in cold weather. I mean, for how many years, how many AFC title games have been in Indianapolis, Foxborough, Kansas City? Did the Jets host one when they went back to there's been a lot of cold weather conference.
I think you just go back and forth between Phoenix and New Orleans for the AFC Championship game, and you go back and forth between Miami and Vegas for the AFC. I mean, for the NFC.
Atlanta, Vegas, Miami.
Yeah,
all the big Super Bowl ones.
Yeah. You just bounce it back and forth. You can't play in LA because you could end up a situation where you got basically a home game for
go to London.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that you use NFC stadiums for the
NFC stadiums for the AFC games. You AFC stadiums for the NFC games, and just kind of pick a couple good ones and bounce it back and forth every year.
I feel dumb.
Yeah, you go. I'll put Houston, Miami, and Vegas in a 3-way for
and then
the
Atlanta,
NFC. New Orleans, and Phoenix.
Dallas.
Oh yeah. Oh, there you go. Oh, Dallas
is better than Phoenix.
Better than Atlanta. No, Phoenix. Phoenix, Dallas. Phoenix, Dallas, New Orleans for the NFC or the AFC game.
Yeah, Tottenham for the AFC, Wembley for the NFC.
That'll be fun one year. They'll do that.
They're gonna. within like 25 years, don't you think there's
Is it nice to be in London in January?
Well, that's the thing. The fact that we've breached South America now, do you think that we'll have a Super Bowl in like, a different country?
Rio.
A Super Bowl in Rio?
Yeah, it's summer down there.
I'm Googling when is Carnival.
It's real close.
I was going to say
it's real close. It's like middle of February. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is February. So this year it is February 8th through the 13th.
Yeah. When
is the Super Bowl? The Super Bowl is the 11th. So literally, if the Super Bowl were in Rio de Janeiro, but we went way off the reservation here, but it would be during Carnival. My God, the trouble you could get in.
Sending a bunch of NFL fans to Rio for carnivals seems a little dangerous. Who knows? Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm sure. Hey, you make an extra $100 billion? Get Saudi Arabia involved. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. Get the
playing it at like 3 a.m. local time.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap it up here.
Best team total. Packers over.
Oh no, I want Bills under. I think, right? Because there's
such
a
KC Maxi though.
There's a lot of scope for Packers to, the bubble pop, Cinderella's, time hits midnight. And it's 20 and a half. Unders. Oh yeah, 20 and a half is juice to the over right now, so that's good. I mean, it's a favorable over 20 and a half.
23 and a half for a Buffalo team that's looked awful good.
Yeah, I think that's right at the top of their range, though.
Okay, I'll ride with you there.
If it goes to overtime, it'll be funny.
Yeah,
okay.
And then we go to they go to overtime with like 18 points. You don't know.
Josh Allen is just running on every down and can't be tackled, and you're just like, oh, for Christ's sake.
Josh Allen is the kid who needs to be medicated in your class that forgot his riddle in that day. Like, do you remember the Mike Myers sketch from 100 years ago where he's like tied to the jungle gym and they give him a chocolate bar and he just runs and like the whole jungle gym comes with him?
Sure.
It's Josh Allen.
I love that.
Let's call it a night. We'll catch you guys this weekend. Enjoy the football. If you're, obviously we're on Twitter, we're in the Discord, leave messages here. If you have anything, questions, comments, nuggets, ideas, thoughts, leave them. We'd love to hear. We'd love to talk football. Only 7 games left. Hit the thumbs up on the way out if you're watching the YouTube. Leave a positive review for the podcast. If you
or just like this show sucks. The host yelled at
or
me.
whatever. I never read the reviews. I have the thinnest skin ever. I can't possibly read them. So yeah, if you write something mean, no, I will not see it.
All right.
See you guys.
Best of luck.
And shout out to Cool. Got some cool gear in the mail today.
Oh, hell yeah.
Got a hell of a deal.
Did they restart action at Wimbledon at long last?
I think they're getting close.
Oh, no. Didn't get the break. Did I say Wimbledon? I meant the Aussie Open, obviously.